because this is the biggest driving school in Europe, if not the world. Now, if you use the roads around the town of Beverley on Humberside, you may have noticed that you keep coming up behind flatbed trucks with no load on, and an L plate on the back, and 3 people in the cab. And no sooner have you overtaken one than you come up behind another, often towing a trailer. Why does this happen? Well, because the British Army has set up a gigantic driving school to get up to 10,000 soldiers a year through their truck test. These trucks are leased by the Army and they're designed to be as easy to drive as possible. In fact, they can take a 17-year-old soldier who hasn't even driven a car before and get him through the test in just 40 hours. But with a simple gearbox, power steering and a trailer that's almost impossible to jackknife in test conditions, has the Army really taught these youngsters to drive the sort of vehicles they come up against in service? Especially when they're asked to tackle terrain like this. The answer, of course, is that they don't just teach recruits to pass their test on smooth tarmac. They also teach drivers to handle monsters like this. So what are the specialist techniques they're teaching? Well, it's use of the right ratio of the gearbox for cross-country work, the selection of the 6-wheel drive, the locking of the differentials. But the lesson they want to get into recruits above all is, before you commit yourself to crossing a bit of ground in this vehicle, do a recce first on foot and make sure you can get through, because once you get this lot stuck, you're in big trouble. Its job is to drop a huge load of shells to a field gun crew and then sprint off for more. Incredibly, my instructor can do it in just 20 seconds.
It's very simple to drive because the controls are it's an automatic vehicle, it's got power steering, so it is simple to drive, but it's extremely big, and mechanically it's quite complex underneath as well.
And presumably costs an awful lot of money. You don't want them to go wrong in it?
No, we certainly don't want it to go wrong, and we don't want them to get stuck either, so we like the training to be as comprehensive as we can make it.
Now, this is one situation where the recruit simply mustn't get it wrong. This is the Hägglunds Snowcat, all-terrain vehicle. It swims, it goes through snow and sand, bog and marsh. They reckon there's nothing will stop it. It's also got a powered trailer. The trailer behind is on hydraulic rams, so it acts like a rudder as we're going along. I just hope these bilge pumps keep working. And when the going gets rough, well, the Hägglund just keeps on going. They teach Army instructors to tackle seemingly impossible gradients and obstacles. And if they need faster, lightweight, high-speed transport across country, well, there's always the Supercat to play with. This stunning little device can be dropped by parachute and take 2 men and a load wherever you want it to go. It's reassuringly fitted with a tiltometer, but if you've got time to look down at an instrument on these slopes, you've got more nerve than I have. Now, when I was taught to drive a truck, they always said, keep a good look all round and use your mirrors. Bit difficult when you're peering through 6-inch slots. So it's really just as well that the Saxon 11-ton armoured personnel carrier always has a crew of 2. And the guy sitting up in the turret there is my eyes and ears. It's quite an easy vehicle to drive though. Just don't forget, your left foot isn't working a clutch, it's working the brakes. And if the lookout doesn't scream as you come up to a puddle, keep your foot down. Now, you might have thought in these days of sophisticated communication, you wouldn't need dispatch riders carrying bits of paper around. But today, mounted on Harley-Davidsons and trained on Suzukis, the Army dispatch rider is alive and well. This is an instructor's course learning to pass on off-road skills.
In a communications sense, we use bikes to move messages around when we really don't want to use the radios for other reasons. But we also use the bikes for reconnaissance and for escorting convoys on the roads.
But it's not just with motorcycles that the army is flirting with foreign manufacturers. The Austrian Pinzgauer is acknowledged as one of the very best cross-country machines in the business, and the army love them. They report they're totally indestructible, almost soldier-proof. Here they're teaching drivers to handle the complex low ratio and diff-lock transmissions. Now, while it's obviously important that the school churns out qualified drivers, they're also deeply concerned to make them safe drivers. And that's why skid avoidance and skid control is an important part of the course. Mounted on hydraulic skid frames, trucks and Land Rovers can slide around the school's runways in complete safety, reproducing everything from simple greasy tarmac to the most lethal surface of all, water on ice. And bomb disposal crews are taught to drive fast and safely in adverse situations. But why does the Army need such a sophisticated school?
It was after the 1970s defence cuts that the smaller arms and service driver training schools were pulled together and centralised here at Leconfield. And we've got a throughput of 10,000 students here every year, and part of the driver training system is to gain a licence. And we've found that it's cost effective to use lease hire civilian vehicles, 150 of them, which has replaced 250 army vehicles that have gone back to the field army use.
Now, it seems to us the army's being run down, the Soviet threat seems to have disappeared. Why do you still need to keep training hundreds of drivers?
Well, we still have logistical requirements. We still have to get our supplies, probably faster today than in the past, to the front line. And there is approximately 15,000 soldiers who join the army every year. And a percentage of those will require a driving licence.
The school has a deadly serious object, to turn out highly trained, safe and motivated army drivers. But they do seem to have fun doing it.
In the beginning, there was the Ferrari F40, the first production car to crack 200 miles an hour. Lamborghini fought back with the Diablo. But it too was made to look stupid by the Jaguar XJ220 with a top speed of 213 miles an hour. It was the fastest car in the world, a record it held for about 6 minutes. Then came the McLaren F1. Top speed 231 miles an hour. That's pathetic. $1 million for a car that can only do 231 miles an hour. I know a Ford that'll go faster than that. So here we are at Le Mans, scene of the Ford GT40's 4 epic wins in the 1960s, and scene now of my introduction to its spiritual successor, the GT90, a car that could well turn out to be the fastest road car in the world. Ooh, yes. Yes. And this time, Mr. Noel Edmonds, are you fit? What Ford has done is take the chassis and suspension from the Jaguar XJ220 and set out to create the meanest, nastiest, most evil piece of automotive hardware ever. The engine has 12 cylinders, 48 valves and 4 turbos, which right now have their wastegates jammed open. If Ford weren't being such spoil-sports with the turbo, this car would be producing, and sit down for this, 720 brake horsepower. That's 7 times more than you get in a Mondeo. It's twice as much as you get in a TVR Cerbera. It's very nearly 200 horsepower more than you get in a McLaren F1. It's by far the most powerful car in the world, and it sounds like it too. I know the turbos aren't connected up, but you can still hear them whistling away back there. And then there's the bark of the V12. Heaven really is a place on earth.
The turbos aren't working because the engineers are still not sure the chassis could handle all the power. Power that could get this car from 0 to 60 in 3.1 seconds and on to a top speed of 235. It's fantastic, but it does beg the question, why?
It's been 30 years since the GT40. The GT90 was a good way to commemorate the 30-year anniversary of the GT40. And with the introduction of the reorganization of Ford product development, we wanted a good example, outstanding example of Ford's technology prowess. What better way than the GT90?
I don't want to appear rude, but the supercar is a European thing. It's something that we do. So what are you Americans doing muscling in on our territory?
Just to prove that we could build one better. I would remind you that the GT40 that won 4 years in a row was powered by an American V8.
Yeah, but we designed the rest of it. It's a British car.
Not the American V8. The car was.
Yes. But this is an all-American effort. How do you think it would stack up to McLarens, Bugattis, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and so on?
The GT90, as you know, is a concept vehicle. It's a one-off car. But if we had a 2 to 3 year development program, there's no doubt that we could build a car that would be fully competitive.
What do you mean by fully competitive?
Better.
It's not really fair to judge this as a driving machine because it is just a one-off concept car. The steering wheel's loose, I can't see the dials, but I love the gearbox straight out of an XJ220, love the noise, love the character of the car, very macho. America's first attempt at a supercar, and they pulled it off.
But the best thing is the way this car looks, like something from the mind of James Cameron. Not pretty like a Ferrari or obvious like a Lambo. More like an origami interpretation of a hobnail boot.
Of course, being a supercar, you get the usual supercar problem. No rear three-quarter vision, but Ford's thought about that. There are sensors outside there, and if they detect a car overtaking me, haha, fat chance. A huge red warning light comes on in the door mirror.
This could be the cleverest, most exciting car ever, but senior Ford management has pulled the plug. It isn't going to be made. But hey, don't worry. There's always the Fiesta diesel to look forward to.
The Nissan Sunny may have a daft name. It may be plain to look at and driving school dull, but it's earned a reputation as one of the most reliable cars Nissan ever made. Boring it may be, but having found 80,000 happy owners, at least some people seem to like them.
But good news, the Nissan Sunny is no more. Goodbye, baby, and amen. And this is its replacement, the Almera, so named because it sounds the same in any European lingo. Now, Nissan hope to sell 20,000 of these in the UK next year, which, by anybody's standards, is a lot of motors.
So the question everybody will be asking is, will it, like the old model, be seen as a teeny bit steady, or can it seriously lock horns with the likes of the Escort, Astra and Golf? To do that, it has to have the sort of looks that sell. An improvement over the perpendicular Sunny maybe, but you could hardly say we're at the cutting edge of car design. They've tried with those bold curved C-pillars and dainty rear opera windows, and the peaked cap rear spoiler is a well-intentioned flourish. But apart from the back end, the Almera looks a lot like, well, most other hatchbacks.
But Oriental Motors have always had another strong suit, and that's their blade, and the Almera is no exception.
This is the 1.6 SRI and comes with 16 valves, multi-point fuel injection and multi-link rear suspension, which means it goes, handles and rides very nicely indeed. In fact, it's quite fun to hurl about. And when you ring down to the engine room, it can scrabble to 60 miles an hour in less than 11 seconds. So far, so good. Things are looking quite promising.
Full marks for safety too. All but the lowliest Almera comes with a driver's side airbag, while all models get side impact beams in the doors and an eye-level rear brake light at the back. Inside there's plenty of leg and headroom, but this is not the Almera's strongest suit. It's all a bit plasticky, all a bit unimaginative. You'll either love or loathe the crayon-coloured upholstery. And why, oh why, do all Japanese cars have to look like they bought their switches from the same shop?
Almera comes in just two sizes, 3 and 5 door, with a choice of 1.4, 1.6 and 2-litre diesel power plants. And there's a GTI on the cards for next year. Prices start from a whisker under 10 grand to nearly 13,000 for the top-notch SLX. And each Almera comes with Nissan's Sleep Easy 3-year, 60,000 mile warranty.
So, in absolute terms then, this is a very reasonable little car. Good even. It's practical, it's well screwed together, it's safe, solid and secure. But does it have that magic X factor to win the hearts of all those loyal Astra, Escort and Golf owners? Well, we decided to ambush a few to find out.
I don't like the back. I feel it looks like it's an add-on feature.
So if I said, here's this Nissan, give me your Golf, what would you say?
Definitely not. I'll stick with the Golf.
It doesn't look a very sporty car. It doesn't look a very interesting car. The interior, I can say a lot for the interior even, really.
I drive a Enbridge Astra. First overall appearance of this car, it looks nice, it looks better than the Astra itself. I like the interior. I'd go for this.
What do you think your mates would say?
I think they'd agree. You know, it looks better.
It's a Nissan, and Nissans haven't been for the younger generation. It just hasn't got street cred, the name itself. Whereas the Escort goes with the XR3 and that sort of style of car, whereas the Nissan just hasn't got it.
Street cred apart, I have another problem with the Almera. 13 grand is a lot of money, and this car just doesn't have enough clever design detailing. Those little touches that mean so much. Look at the new Escort or even the new Fiesta, and you'll know exactly what I mean.
These days, it's not just a question of being reliable, it's about being interesting, about being different as well. Cars aren't just meant for fetching and carrying. They should entertain, they should divert, they should amuse us. And the Almera, like the Sunny before it, is just a bit too conventional to do that. Sorry.
Top Gear Motorsport returns for a brand new series starting tomorrow on BBC Two at 8 o'clock. To kick off the run, we'll be bringing you the full story of round 3 of the Mobil 1 Top Gear British Rally Championship, the Perth Scottish Rally. Here's a taste of the motorsport action coming your way.
They say that sculpture is the most difficult of all the fine arts, on account of there being 3 dimensions to deal with. They also say that truly great sculpture should imply movement. Well, in Southern California, there is a man whose work doesn't just imply movement, it totally embodies it. This is Boyd Coddington, the Henry Moore of hot rods, the Michelangelo of metal. Hot rods used to be old Fords and Chevys, stripped down, tuned up and street raced on a Saturday night. But they've come a long way since then, and these days Boyd's clients include America's music and movie star aristocracy.
And when I was about the age of 13 years old, I was raised on a farm in Idaho. And that was in the 50s, and my brother was older than me, and his friends had 32 Roadsters and stuff like that. And I just always loved those old cars. And then when I was about 13, I built like a T-Bucket, and then I had a 34 Chevy pickup and some stuff like that. So that's actually where it all started.
Are you an artist or a businessman?
I would like to think that I'm both, if there's such a thing as being both. I know a lot of times that the artist can't be the businessman or the businessman can't be the artist, but I'd like to think that I've split that line.
Who buys a Boyd car?
Anybody from the president of a large corporation to a fireman in Los Angeles. I mean, that's a pretty wide variety, so not just the rich people have them.
But Coddington cars are beyond the reach of impecunious rebels without a cause, and are instead bought by credit-worthy Rotarians without a mortgage.
How much did it cost, if you don't mind me asking?
It cost a lot of time and patience, and the value of the vehicle is in excess of $100,000.
What's the best thing about this car?
The best thing about the car is it makes me happy. It makes me feel good owning it. I can go on and on and talk about the automobile itself, what's best about it. It's probably the finest rod built, in my opinion, bar none, from the ground up.
Well, you would say that is your car.
That's right.
What's the worst thing about it, Ara? The rearwards visibility springs to mind. I mean, do those mirrors work?
Yes, they do.
They're like
really
dentist
functional.
mirrors.
They're really functional mirrors.
Within the hot rod industry, an industry worth hundreds of millions of dollars, Boyd is like Liberace or Madonna. One name is enough. That name is used to sell all manner of products, including over 100,000 wheels each year. But this computer-controlled process is light years away from the monastic calm of the rod shop.
I've noticed that a lot of the guys that work for you building rods are European. Why is that?
I think that everybody knows that the old craftsmanship and stuff, it was through Germany and England and through that. I just think that the way the people were taught, it's more of our kind of style as the coach builders or whatever, but there's a different ethics and culture that goes along very much with our business. It's really harder to do a car with the clean look as it is to just start putting a lot of mirrors and headlights and stuff on it. And of course, if you can start at the back end of the car and take your eye and run it all the way up to the front, if nothing catches attention, I think you did a good job.
This car is a perfect expression of that philosophy. It was once an early 30s Ford, a family car, no great shakes. But now it has the performance, the paint job and the price tag of a Ferrari. Yours for 75 grand. And that's pounds, not dollars.
Now, for that sort of money, you could have maybe bought yourself a Porsche or a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, did you not?
Absolutely, they're fine cars, but they're not individual cars. Anybody can buy a Porsche, Lamborghini, or
Yeah, but this
Mercedes.
is a Ford. This is a £75,000 Ford.
This is a Ford that is totally handmade. There are very few parts on this car that haven't been completely reworked and redone.
It's a great car, Stan, but I have to say that the stereo's not very special. Why is that?
The stereo is nice when you get bored, but I'd much rather listen to the cam and the exhaust note. To me, that is where that machinery sound that you get only in a hot rod. You get a pollution controlled car that has got 0 horsepower, 0 response. This is a totally visceral experience when you drive a hot rod.
Will you ever sell it?
Only under severe duress.
Boyd does build great cars, but it seems a shame to drive anything in a place where last month's rainfall was a nice round figure, 0.000 inches. No, as far as I'm concerned, round these parts there's only one way to travel. 2 wheels. Happily, Boyd's been working on it.
And there was one peal of thunder, and I